China just moved warships into the Persian Gulf, not as an observer, not as a warning, as a combatant. For the first time in modern history, a nuclear-armed superpower is standing between the United States military and its objective, inside an active war zone. Here is what makes this different from every other geopolitical standoff you have ever watched. China did not react to this war. China was ready for it. The ships were positioned. The diplomatic cover was prepared. The economic agreements were already signed. The only thing missing was the moment, and Washington just handed it to them. The Persian Gulf is not an ocean. It is a bathtub, 600 kilometers long, 300 kilometers wide at its broadest point, and completely enclosed on three sides by land that either hates you or is watching you very carefully. For decades, the United States Navy owned that bathtub. No adversary questioned it. No peer competitor entered it. That changed this week. China deployed 2 destroyer squadrons into the northern Gulf within 72 hours of the U.S. strikes on Iran. Not Coast Guard vessels, not diplomatic ships, destroyers equipped with the YJ-18 anti-ship missile with a range of 500 kilometers and a terminal speed of Mach 3. Every U.S. carrier group in the Gulf is inside that range, every single one. 3 U.S. carrier groups entered the Persian Gulf under one assumption, that Iran was the only adversary in the room. Washington built its entire operational plan around that assumption. It was wrong. Because while Washington was calculating what Iran could do, Beijing was calculating something else entirely. Not how to stop the war, how to use it. The only question that matters now is how long China had been waiting for this moment. In March 2021, China and Iran signed a document that most Western analysts noted briefly and then forgot. It was called the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. It covered 25 years. And it was not a friendship agreement. It was a blueprint. Under that deal, China committed to investing $400 billion into Iranian infrastructure, energy, and military development. In return, 25 years of heavily discounted Iranian oil, negotiated while Iran was under maximum U.S. sanctions. Read that again. Washington was squeezing Iran economically. Beijing was signing long-term energy contracts with it. Iran is not a peripheral interest for China. It is the geographic keystone of the entire Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing's multi-trillion-dollar plan to control the trade corridors of the 21st century. Lose Iran, and the land corridor fractures. Fracture the corridor, and the entire strategic architecture Beijing spent a decade building starts coming apart at its center. China has invested more in Iranian ports, railways, and refineries since 2021 than most countries spend on their entire defense budget. This was never about ideology. It was never about solidarity with Tehran. It was about the cold arithmetic of what happens to Chinese power if that infrastructure burns. China imports approximately 11 million barrels of oil every single day. Roughly 40% of that comes through the Persian Gulf, not from Iran alone, but through the same waterway that the U.S. Navy is now trying to control. Beijing does not need Iran to survive. Beijing needs the Gulf to stay open, on terms that Beijing influences. And that is a completely different calculation from the one Washington assumed China was making. So when the first American bombs fell on Iranian soil, Beijing had a decision to make. Accept a world where the United States controls the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and by extension, 40% of China's daily energy supply. Or move. China moved. But here is the detail that separates a reaction from a plan. China moved in 72 hours. Not 72 days, not 72 weeks, 72 hours. That is not a response. That is a deployment that was already prepared, waiting for an order that Beijing had already decided it would give. The only question left is when they decided. And the answer to that question changes everything about how this war is understood. There is a concept in strategic military planning called a prepared battle space. It means you do not fight the war where your enemy is strong. You fight it where you have already been, quietly, invisibly, for years before the first shot is fired. China has been in the Persian Gulf's prepared battle space since at least 2016. Not with warships, with something more durable. Infrastructure, agreements, positioning, patience. Consider what China built in the decade before this war began. A naval logistics base in Djibouti, the first Chinese overseas military installation since 1949. Deep port investments in Gwadar, Pakistan, directly at the mouth of the Gulf. Logistics agreements with Oman and the UAE, two countries sitting on either side of the Strait of Hormuz. None of these were described as military assets at the time. Every single one functions as one now. The United States entered Operation Epic Fury with 3 carrier groups. That is the largest American naval deployment since the Second Gulf War. And it is precisely the kind of deployment that China's entire military modernization program, the last 20 years of shipbuilding, missile development, and anti-access strategy, was designed to neutralize. Not defeat in open ocean, neutralize in confined water. The DF-21D ballistic missile, called the Carrier Killer, was built for one purpose: to make an aircraft carrier too expensive to operate inside a specific geographic zone. That zone is the Persian Gulf. So here is the question the trap framing forces us to ask. Did China encourage Iran to hold firm against U.S. pressure, knowing it would eventually provoke exactly this military deployment? Did Beijing watch Washington build its case for war and calculate that the U.S. would send precisely the assets that China's arsenal was designed to counter? There is no confirmed answer to that question, but there is a pattern, and the pattern looks less like coincidence the longer you examine it. China signed the 25-year deal in 2021. China expanded its Gulf logistics network between 2019 and 2024. China completed its 3rd aircraft carrier in 2024. China deployed to the Gulf in 72 hours. Ask yourself, what is the one word that connects all 4 of those facts? Each of them is individually explainable. Together, they have a name: preparation. And if this is preparation, if the trap was designed before the war began, then the United States is not fighting Iran in the Persian Gulf. It is fighting the strategic architecture of its only true peer competitor, in a space that competitor spent a decade making ready. That is the turning point of this conflict, not the bombs that fell on Tehran. This. An aircraft carrier is the most powerful conventional weapons platform ever built. It carries 80 aircraft. It projects force across 600 kilometers of open ocean. It has never lost a direct engagement in the history of naval warfare. That record was built in open water. The Persian Gulf is not open water. At its widest point, the Persian Gulf stretches 300 kilometers. A supersonic anti-ship missile covers that distance in under 6 minutes. The YJ-18 that China's destroyers carry does it in 4. The DF-21D ballistic missile, launched from Iranian soil, does it in less than 3. There is no carrier defense system currently deployed that intercepts a hypersonic ballistic missile with a 100% success rate. Not one. The U.S. Navy has wargamed this scenario repeatedly. In 2002, a classified Pentagon simulation called Millennium Challenge ran exactly this situation: a large American fleet in a confined waterway against a smaller adversary using asymmetric weapons. The American fleet was sunk within the first hours. The simulation was restarted with new rules that prevented the Red Team from using the tactics that worked. The American fleet won the second time. But the Gulf did not get any wider, and the missiles did not get any slower. Now add what was not present in 2002. Chinese destroyer squadrons in the northern Gulf, each one a targeting platform, feeding real-time data to Iranian coastal batteries. Iranian proxy naval assets from Iraqi and Yemeni positions. Small, fast, expendable, designed to overwhelm close-in defense systems through volume alone. Russian signals intelligence vessels in the Arabian Sea, close enough to monitor every U.S. communication and feed it to Beijing in real time. 3 separate threat axes, 1 enclosed body of water, 3 carrier groups that cannot maneuver without entering the range of at least 1 adversary. This is what trapped means in naval terms. Not surrounded by walls, surrounded by kill zones. Every exit route from the Persian Gulf passes through the Strait of Hormuz, 33 kilometers wide, flanked by Iranian soil on one side and Omani territory on the other. China has agreements with Oman. Iran owns the other bank. The United States Navy entered the Persian Gulf as the dominant force in the room. It is still the most powerful fleet in that water. But power and freedom of movement are not the same thing. And right now, the most powerful fleet in the Persian Gulf does not have clean freedom of movement. That is the military trap. Visible now, documented, undeniable. But the trap that affects every single person watching this video, the one that does not require a naval uniform to feel, is the economic one. And it is already springing. The military standoff in the Persian Gulf is a story about warships and missiles. The economic standoff is a story about your heating bill, your grocery receipt, the price on the fuel pump the next time you fill your car. Those two stories are the same story. And the second one started the moment China's destroyers entered the Gulf. Before China's deployment, the Strait of Hormuz was already closed to commercial traffic. 20% of the world's daily oil supply already stopped. Now add the presence of Chinese naval assets directly challenging the U.S. fleet's freedom of movement. Insurance providers did not wait for a battle to begin. They repriced the entire Gulf as a war zone for every vessel, every cargo, every route within 48 hours of China's deployment. Not a war risk surcharge, a full war zone classification. That is a different number entirely. Container shipping through the Gulf does not simply stop, it reroutes. Around the Cape of Good Hope, adding 14 days to every voyage that previously took 4. 14 additional days of fuel, 14 additional days of crew costs. Do you know what travels on those ships? Electronics, clothing, food, medicine, industrial components. Everything absorbs that cost before it reaches a shelf. And that cost does not stay in the shipping industry. It moves directly into the price of everything you buy. While U.S. carrier groups sit inside a Gulf they cannot freely exit, China is building the road around them. The International North-South Transport Route connects Chinese manufacturing to European and Middle Eastern markets over land, through Iran, through the Caspian, through Russia. No Strait of Hormuz, no Persian Gulf, not a single waterway the United States Navy controls. While Washington manages a military standoff, Beijing is making that standoff irrelevant to its own supply chain. Saudi Arabia began accepting Chinese yuan for oil settlements in 2023. The UAE expanded yuan-denominated trade agreements in 2024. Iran has conducted 0 dollar-denominated oil transactions since 2018. Russia settled 40% of its trade in non-dollar currencies last year. The dollar's role as the world's reserve currency was built on one foundation above all others: that global oil is priced and settled in dollars. That foundation is cracking, not breaking, not collapsed, but cracking in exactly the place and at exactly the speed that Beijing has been applying pressure for a decade. Every day this standoff continues. Every day the Gulf stays closed. Every day the alternative corridor moves more cargo. The crack gets wider. That is not a military story. That is the story of who controls the economic architecture of the next 50 years. And right now, that story has 2 authors. One of them is winning. There have been moments in modern history where the world reorganized itself, not gradually, not through negotiation, through a single week of events that made the previous arrangement permanently unavailable. 1956, Suez, the moment Britain and France discovered that European empires no longer set the terms of the Middle East. 1973, the oil embargo, the moment the world discovered that energy was a weapon and that the people who held it would use it. 2003, Iraq. The moment American military confidence began spending itself faster than it could be replenished. Each of those weeks looked like a crisis at the time. Each of them was actually a hinge, a door closing on one world and opening permanently onto another. This is that week. Not because of the bombs that fell on Iran, not because of the supreme leader who was killed, not even because of the 3 carrier groups now sitting inside a geometry they cannot easily escape, but because of what China's deployment revealed about the world that already existed before the first American strike. A world where U.S. naval dominance was no longer assumed by the one country whose assumption of it matters most. The United States Navy has patrolled the Persian Gulf without a peer competitor since 1945. 80 years. 2 generations of strategic planners built their entire worldview on that single fact. It was not a fact this week. And facts that stop being true do not quietly return to being true. They leave a gap, and other powers move into gaps. Beijing is not declaring victory. That is not how China operates. There will be no triumphant announcement, no military parade, no statement claiming the Gulf as Chinese territory. China does not need to say it. The destroyers say it. The cracking dollar says it. The insurance maps that now shade the entire Persian Gulf red say it. In the language of strategic power, presence is the statement, and China is present. Washington will respond, diplomatically, economically, perhaps militarily. The coming weeks will bring negotiations that did not exist before this month, alliances tested in ways they have never been tested, and decisions in capitals from Riyadh to New Delhi that will quietly but permanently reshape which direction those countries lean. The crisis is not over. It has not even reached its most dangerous point yet. But one thing is already over. The world in which the United States could project decisive military force into the Persian Gulf without a peer competitor in the room, that world ended this week. It will not come back. China did not start this war, but China was ready for it. And the difference between those 2 sentences, the distance between not starting something and being ready for it, is the distance between a reaction and a plan. The question is not whether Beijing planned this. The question is, how long ago? If this changed how you see this war, drop a comment right now. Where are you watching from? And do you think China planned this from the beginning or moved opportunistically? If this video gave you something the headlines did not, share it with one person who needs the full picture. And if you want the next breakdown the moment it drops, subscribe. Because this story has not reached its most dangerous chapter yet.